What is up, everybody? It is Sam, and we are back with another episode of Pessimistic at Best, the podcast, and I have my friend Liz with me here today. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Sam. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so excited for this. It's just funny because I feel like the last time that we touched base, it was like 3 weeks ago, but so much has changed for the both of us. So
much has changed. It's been a whirlwind, to say the least.
It has. But I'm excited to do this podcast today. And this is really fun for me because this is like the first time that I have, I guess, like an internet friend on my podcast. So yeah. It's exciting. And it's funny, Liz and I met through Facebook, essentially, we're both podcasters, and she was looking for guests for her podcast, and her podcast is called the FANGIRL podcast. And I saw her post on Facebook, and I was like, well, this is fucking awesome. I want to be a part of this. I'm a fangirl. So
hell yeah, I love it.
Yes. And so I reached out to her, and we just kind of got to talking. And so we recorded an episode for her podcast just a little while ago, which will actually probably be releasing soon. And then we've just kind of kept up that relationship, and I'm really excited to bring her on the podcast here today.
Yay! I am so excited for this. I love when the internet actually does good things, like connect people with similar interests, and you can talk to people on the internet and explore similar interests and get to know each other. And it just, sometimes the internet is really good.
Yes, and sometimes it's really bad, of course, too. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I know. Well, it is crazy because I really feel like at the end of the day, that's what the internet is for. Really, yeah. Mm-hmm. Of course, people can use it to troll people, whatever. There are plenty of haters online, but
yeah.
But this is what it's for, and this is so awesome. And it's really funny because I just feel like, even outside of podcasting, after getting to know you and even just touching base that first time when we had that very first phone call, we literally have so much in common. It's actually crazy.
Yeah, it's really cool because I think I posted in a Facebook group, which I don't even use that often. Mm-hmm. And I posted in the Facebook group, I was like, I need more people to come on my podcast, looking for other people to interview. And you responded, and we started chatting, and we just had a lot in common. I think we bonded mostly over our love for CYRUS.
Hell yes.
And it's just so cool when things work out that way because the internet nowadays, I'm honestly fatigued by it because there's been so many nasty Twitter trolls and social media and fake news and misinformation, all this stuff. It's exhausting. But when the internet actually connects two people that never would have met otherwise, that's the power of the internet. And that's incredible. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Good things come from the internet sometimes.
Definitely. Yes. Keyword. But and I think that's what's so cool because I will agree. I'm online all the fucking time. I'm online for my job. I'm online for, of course, my podcast and just personal social media use. It's also probably where I get my majority of my news. And on top of that, I feel like just with the way, specifically this election year, I feel like it was just fucking crazy on the internet this year. I feel you with the internet fatigue for sure.
Yeah. And because of the pandemic, we are forced to be online all the time. If it was a non-pandemic era, I wouldn't be spending this much time in front of my laptop. But this is the world we live in right now.
Yeah, that's so true. I didn't even think about that. But and that's nowadays, with especially being stuck inside, probably how we get most of our social interaction. Mm-hmm. But it is a different kind, it's not quite the same. It's nice, but it is tiring in a different way. Even on Zoom calls, just almost the back and forth or something about anticipate, you can't get the cues right, the social cues. Yeah. You don't exactly
You're on mute.
Their
You're
body
on mute.
language. Exactly. Yeah, there's just a lot of new kinks that we're kind of trying to work out there, but but it brought us together.
Yeah, that's the one good thing about the internet. And, I'm so grateful that we do have it because could you imagine quarantine without Wi-Fi?
Oh, we'd be so fucking bored.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
At the start of quarantine, I was yeah, I'm at home. I'm kind of bored, but I've got Netflix and Hulu. And exactly. Back in March 2020, I was oh, I've got so much time to watch Netflix now. This is great. And I couldn't imagine like nowadays, of course, I'm sick of Netflix, but like,
Same.
could you imagine if we were in a lockdown and you just didn't have a smartphone or a laptop or any type of Wi-Fi? Like, what would you do?
I know. And you would be so much more disconnected from people than you are right now. Like, yes, we can't really see people in person as much as we would like, but like, you can still keep up with people this way. So,
Yeah.
shout out to the internet.
Shout out internet. You're doing great things. I mean, I should amend this. If we didn't have Wi-Fi in quarantine, we'd probably be reading a lot more books. And we'd probably be like
true.
way more intelligent.
I know.
But I can't live in a world without memes. I just can't do it.
Oh my gosh, no, that's my like relief. That's my little, comedic relief. We need that.
The power of a good meme is just like a hit of dopamine for me these days.
Literally some serotonin, yeah. Yeah, straight up. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, I know that we kind of had a similar journey throughout quarantine too, because, we both lost our jobs. I mean, for me, it was briefly, like I was furloughed. I didn't really know what was going to happen, but I know for you it was a little bit more permanent, which I mean, both are scary, but yours definitely has a little bit more weight.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a weird year. Like I was living in Boston. I had been in Boston for the past 3 years, and January of 2020, I was feeling like this is going to be my year. I feel good at work. I feel like I have a pretty strong network of friends and professional contacts in the city. It was starting to feel more like home. The city of Boston is it's not an easy place to move to. Even as an adult, I had friends in Boston when I moved there. It's kind of a cold city to move to. It's not like people are rolling out the red carpet for you. People in New England are a little more cagey, not quite as friendly as people in other parts of the country.
Those East Coast vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, East Coast vibes for sure. New England Yankee vibes for sure. But it's funny because like at the start of 2020, I was like, it's going to be my year. I've got like a good group of friends in the city. I've got my job. I was planning on doing like 3 or 4 international trips in 2020.
Oh.
I was like, this is going to be a great year. I'm going to Argentina. I'm going to go to Colombia. I was in Ireland in February of 2020, right before the pandemic. And things were like, lining up to be a really great year. March 2020 happens. I worked in the travel industry. So I came back from Ireland and Scotland, I think March 4th or 5th. And 3 days later, our office was closing down. We were trying to evacuate our clients from countries overseas. I had clients who were in Argentina traveling who refused to come home. It was a whole ordeal. It was insane. And it was just chaotic. It felt like a really weird, chaotic time. Like nobody knew what was going to come next. And our office closed down on March 13th. For the next 3 or 4 weeks, I was working from my apartment in Boston. I was simultaneously trying to evacuate clients from countries in Latin America and also talk to current clients that were planning on traveling and getting them either rebooked or refunded. Well, not refunded. We weren't giving them refunds, but trying to re-coordinate their travel plans. So it was like the world was falling down around us. We had no idea what was going on. I remember the streets of Boston being silent, but I could hear sirens all day, every day. This was like last 2 weeks of March in 2020. It was apocalyptic. It was so weird. So my parents live in Vermont and they had an extra bedroom. And I was like, well, I might as well get out of the city. I can go up there. I have roommates in a tiny apartment in Boston. We're going to drive each other nuts if we all stay together.
Totally.
So I went up to Vermont, hung out with my parents for a few weeks. Mid-April, I was furloughed. And the furlough was actually great because I was on furlough until August. And my company was planning on bringing me back in August. So I was living in Vermont with my family, going a little bit crazy, but otherwise, we were in a very rural part of Vermont and cases were pretty low and we could go outside and go for walks and go for hikes and not see anybody else. And, it was a very anxious time, but I was very grateful that I was there because the alternative was being in a tiny apartment with 3 other people in the middle of Boston.
Totally.
So I was pretty lucky in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those things. I mean, because even for me, like, similarly, I was just sharing a very small little apartment. And then at that time, we were both sort of working from home. My furlough was like I essentially got the call from my boss that we needed to, like we were pausing on a lot of our operations. We didn't have a lot of incoming money. So then we just kind of really needed to cut back on the work we were doing. So it was very like vague. And I knew like, me and my coworker who were in the same position both got furloughed. I had been there a little bit longer. So then she brought me back on, really just working on an as needed basis. Like I think for the first couple months, I was really only working like at max 4 hours a week. So in comparison to 40, that's a huge difference. Collecting my unemployment check. That's the first time I have ever been on unemployment. What
Thank
a pain
God
in the
for
ass.
unemployment. Yeah. Thank God. I mean, if I didn't have it, I would be up a creek.
Oh, same.
Along with many other people.
Yeah.
And like, thank God, like I don't have kids or any dependents. So thankfully I was able to get unemployment and use it and paid my rent in Boston that way. So thank God we have these systems in place.
Well, I know, and it was so funny. So I don't know if this is just like a Wisconsin thing or if this was kind of just a mess all over the place. But like for us, it was one of those things where the system was just so backed up. So I applied for unemployment like the second that I got furloughed. But it took months to get my payments. Like there were so many issues. I called 1,000 times. I never got through to a single person. Yeah. And it was so backed up. And I mean, I'm grateful because I got all the back pay. Like it came basically as just one great big huge check. But
yeah, great.
I mean, it was like months of living on 4 hours of work a week, which is nothing. Wow. I slowly worked up my hours. So after a little while, I was doing like okay. And I mean, I wasn't spending a ton of money either, with the exception of rent, so, and I'm not eating out, I'm not going to bars, I'm not doing anything. I'm certainly not buying clothes. I've been wearing the same pair of pajamas for 4 weeks. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the process was just kind of crazy. And then of course, by the time when I actually got my money, like that was awesome. But it took some time.
Yeah. Unemployment. I mean, any government application is a pain in the ass. I mean, we could do a whole podcast about like applying for like a fucking driver's license. It's a total pain. Yes. But thankfully, I think my company just sent all of our information to the Department of Unemployment in Massachusetts. Thankfully, I didn't have any issues with getting unemployment. I know a lot of people had a ton of issues, and unemployment is totally messed up in this country.
Yes.
And it should be a lot easier. Like, I don't know why these states are like, we can't give you any money. We can't give any handouts. It's like, we all lost our jobs.
I know.
As the great prophet Rihanna once said, bitch better have my money.
Hell yes. I know. I mean, that's the thing. Like and also, the government is sitting there saying we have all these rainy day funds. Well, it's fucking pouring. Let's go.
It's raining.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
So I know.
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
But yeah, I am glad for the system. As much of a pain in the ass as it was, it did come through for me in a time of need. So, I mean, but yeah, I guess I know something that was kind of true for both of us was we had maybe a lot more free time on our hands. And that really sparked us getting creative. And I think that was a huge part of me starting my podcast. And I know the same is for you. I mean, for me, it's been something I've wanted to do. I've toyed around with the idea a little bit, but I really don't think I would have had it not been for this sort of lull in responsibilities.
Oh my God, absolutely. So I was furloughed in April. I was basically hanging out all summer, and I was like doing some like kind of freelance work here and there. I was keeping busy in some respects. But all I was doing was listening to podcasts. And as a way to like get away from my family every day, I'd go for a walk on the trail near the house and listen to a podcast for like an hour every day. And I was just crushing podcasts. I really, I listened to podcasts pre-pandemic, but during the pandemic, I like doubled down and just listened to every podcast I could get my hands on. I loved it, became really inspired by a lot of podcasts, and just one day Googled it. I was like, this probably isn't that hard. I should see how we should do this. So I just Googled it, and I was like, oh, all you need is a microphone and like some free software. Let's do it. Why not?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. So it was great. So I think podcasts were really one of the mediums that really got me through quarantine. In addition to Netflix and Hulu and Spotify, I would have been lost without my podcasts. And I was listening to a ton of podcasts about like relationships, dating, a lot of comedy podcasts, a lot of pop culture podcasts. There's two that really inspired me, and they were Girls Gotta Eat, which is a podcast. Love Girls Gotta Eat.
Yes.
They're so much fun, and they've just inspired me to like do so many things in life. They're amazing. So that's a podcast about dating, sex, relationships, and the girls are hilarious. And I'm a big fan of that show. There's another show called Be There in 5, which is done by a woman called Kate Kennedy, who formerly worked in marketing, and she's always loved pop culture. So she does deep dives on different topics in pop culture. She talks a lot about trends in marketing and social media and, current events in society. For example, she'll do a 2-hour podcast series about the Free Britney movement.
Oh, hell
She
yeah.
does deep dives into different TikTok influencers and deep dives into all the Taylor Swift albums. So, any podcast about Taylor Swift, I'm there. So I was sold. But I love listening to those podcasts. I was really inspired by those ladies. And I was like, you know what? I should just Google this and see how you actually start a podcast. So step 1 of doing anything in your life is go to Google and figure it out.
Exactly. Google has all the answers.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I love Girls Gotta Eat. So they're so funny, and they're just so like open, like no topic is off limits. So I love that about their podcast. Also a huge fan. I have never heard of the second one you mentioned, but that sounds right up my alley. Like I love pop culture topics. I also really like having things like TikTok explained to me, because TikTok's one of those platforms that makes me actually feel a little bit old. Like I'm on it, but I'm not like on it, like
I downloaded the app once, and I think I was like too intimidated to actually start an account. I was like, all these Gen Zers, I just can't do it.
Well, I know. And then I have such FOMO because I'm like, well, I don't want to be that, like, I'm not out of touch, like not yet.
Well, basically I listened to her podcast because she does a lot of different topics over about pop culture, but I'm like, I need somebody to explain TikTok to me in great detail. And she goes into literally intense detail. Her podcasts are like 1.5 to 2 hours long at times.
Wow.
And that was really interesting to me because I think most podcasts now compete for like a 30-minute time slot. And I was like, oh, you can do a podcast and it can be more than 30 minutes. It blew my mind to think about that. Yeah. So that was when I started thinking about what can I talk about on my show? Well, I love pop music. I love female singer-songwriters. And this person is showing me you can have a podcast that is a super long format show and still be successful. So that was really inspiring for me to see that. So I'm, very inspired by long deep dives on random topics in pop culture.
Totally.
Which is kind of what my show's about. So.
Absolutely. Okay. So when I first saw that you put out like that call on Facebook for guests, I like went and checked out your podcast, and this was the first time I've ever seen a podcast that could have like the music right there in it. Like I didn't even know that was a possibility, and it was so fucking cool. Like you got to talk about the songs and then literally play them and reference them. And I was like, how is this happening? And I was so surprised too, because it literally pulls the song. Like it'll switch from your logo to being whatever album cover situation.
Yeah. So it's funny you mention that, because I did a ton of research on music in podcasts. I have a friend who owns a music studio. He works with a ton of artists. I was like, what's the deal? Am I going to get sued if I play a Taylor Swift song in my podcast? Exactly. Because I'm sure all the big wigs at executives are going to come after me. Because I'm so famous and popular. Yeah, right. But no, I was really worried about that. So I did a lot of research on different software companies to host my podcast, because I have no idea how to distribute a podcast, how to make a podcast, etc. So I Googled how to make a podcast.
Naturally, as one does.
As you do. And Anchor came up, and Anchor has been pretty cool. It's a free online platform for recording, editing, and distributing podcasts. And I was researching it. At the time, I was listening to a podcast that was hosted on the Anchor platform, and I was like, this seems pretty cool. Let me give it a go. So you can record a podcast on Anchor. I started recording this back in November, and in December, they announced a partnership with Spotify. So Anchor has been acquired by Spotify. Spotify is investing millions and millions of dollars into podcasting now because podcasting is literally becoming the next big medium. Mm-hmm. And because Anchor is now owned by Spotify, you can use Spotify Music in your Anchor podcast. So that was the workaround for me because I was really nervous about buying music, licensing music, inserting it at the right time in my podcast. I'm not great with editing audio, so I was really concerned about that. And the first few episodes I did not contain music. But I think it was December or January of 2021 when they announced this partnership with Spotify. And I was like, this is incredible. I'm going to use this to put music in my podcast. The only downside of this is if you have Spotify Music on your podcast on Anchor, you cannot be played on Apple Podcasts. Okay, which is tough because Apple Podcasts has the interface that is a lot more, it's a lot easier to find and be recommended podcasts on Apple because there's a review system on Apple. Mm-hmm. Spotify doesn't have reviews. So a lot of people want to be on Apple Podcasts because you can rate, review, and subscribe. You can get 5 stars if your listeners follow you. And that bumps you up to the top of the charts. So Apple still really has a hold on charts and what's popular. Mm-hmm. And Apple really has a ton of data about who's listening to those podcasts. And Spotify is trying to compete. The problem is Spotify doesn't have that review feature in its app. So it's harder to discover podcasts that you might like. Spotify, of course, can serve you ads for podcasts that they think you might like, but it's a very different kind of interface than the Apple podcast. So I really like having music in my podcast. I'm going to continue just using Spotify and Anchor. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of, stopped because I'm now using the music. My podcast is not appearing on Apple Podcasts. And sure. I was kind of bummed about that at first, but I don't really care all that much. So I'm just going to go with Spotify and keep using Anchor. And so far, it's been really fun to use the software. It's totally free. You can even record ads that will be inserted into your podcast. So it's a pretty amazing tool.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, because I guess there are always going to be those things that you have to kind of weigh. I think for yours, it just works so well with the music. Like, it makes so much sense. So, so that makes sense to me. And I mean, it's funny because even for me, I do actually have my podcast on like a lot of platforms, but I personally listen to most of my podcasts on Spotify anyway. So that tends to be the link that I promote the most. And so I get most of my listens on there too. I think I do have a couple reviews on Apple, but they're, I don't even ask for them as much as I probably should because I forget that that's even a thing. So
yeah, I think I have one review and it's from my mom on Apple.
Yeah, right, exactly. They're all from people I know for sure.
And she didn't write a review. She just tapped 5 stars and then left the page. Yeah. I was like, Mom, come on.
Right. At least have a little something to say.
Yeah. She has no idea how to use podcasts. She has no idea. I just show her how to find my podcast on Spotify.
Yeah, it's funny. My parents are the same way. I don't think they really listen to them. It's just not something that they do. And I think it is, well, I shouldn't say that. I think it is becoming more popular across the board, but I think for the most part, it kind of started as something that was more like the millennial thing. Like, millennials love a good podcast, and that's true. Like, they really do. But
yeah. And you have to be a little tech savvy to understand a podcast.
Yeah.
My mom has none of that. I'm like, Mom, it's like a radio program on your phone. And she still doesn't get it.
Well, okay, so it's super funny. My mom is like half deaf. She had hearing loss since she was a baby. So she has hearing aids, and they essentially operate, I mean, of course, they help her hear things, but they also essentially operate kind of like AirPods, like they're Bluetooth. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so she can just like plug me in to, and then she's just like listening to me in her hearing aids. It's so
That's
funny.
Incredible.
Yeah. There was this
I
one
had no
time.
idea.
I know,
That's so amazing.
right? And
so amazing.
she definitely, again, similar to your mom, not at all tech savvy. Like the fact that she even has Bluetooth hearing aids, probably way above her league, but but that's okay. She likes them and they help her hear. They have all these crazy settings. Like if she's in a restaurant, there's a restaurant setting where it kind of tries to just like get the immediate noise instead of...
Oh.
Yeah, they're very high tech.
Ooh. I would love a pair of those because I mean, not like I've been in a crowded restaurant lately, but like...
We miss it.
I get so distracted. I'm like, who's talking? Which conversation shall I listen to? Like, I just can't. All that noise like drives me nuts.
Oh, I'm the same way. I know. And so she really
That
likes
being said,
them.
I would give anything to like be in a restaurant right now with other people.
Oh, don't even get me started. I like had a breakdown the other day to James and I was like, I would literally give anything to just go and eat in public.
Yeah.
Like it's to the point where I'm so tired of cooking. I'm so tired of even just deciding what the fuck I'm going to have for dinner. Like the amount of times I have had to make that decision is insane.
It's just decision fatigue. It's a real thing.
Like,
this is why Zuckerberg wears the same thing to work every day because he doesn't want to make another decision.
Yeah, and I can respect that because I have been doing the exact same thing. Something about working from home, I don't change clothes.
Yeah. My yoga pants are like, I'm never going back to jeans ever.
Exactly. Okay, well, I want to know though, because obviously I know a little bit of your podcasting origin story, but like I know that you just like I think your podcast is so awesome. You have such a clear fandom, and I think it's really awesome that you were able to channel that into a creative podcast and kind of make it your own. So I guess just like how did you get started and like how did you pick your topic, like your kind of niche?
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I am really, really having a lot of fun with my podcast. I'm learning so much about how to podcast, how to edit audio, how to reach an audience, how to do social media. I'm like, it's such a fun project to work on. So I love doing it. And it's funny because I have always loved music. I've always loved pop music and I've always loved pop culture. I've always been really into like not super into like celebrity gossip, but I've always kind of stayed abreast of those things. Mm-hmm. I've always gravitated towards female singer-songwriters. Even when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the Spice Girls. I love Britney Spears. Like 90s pop was my fucking jam. Like what a great era to grow up. It was amazing. It was before the internet. It was before smartphones. It was like such an innocent time where like, in order to like connect with an artist, you had to buy their CD, write them a letter to their fan mail club, yes. Maybe go to their concert and like hope they would like see you on the Jumbotron.
With your sign. Yeah.
Exactly. And like, we didn't have access to celebrities like we do nowadays. Mm-hmm. Like if I want to connect with Britney Spears, I'm going to go stalk her on Instagram. And I have 100%. So much access to her and I can see photos of her dancing in her house. And I can, look at photos of Britney on the internet from back in the day during the Oops, I Did It Again video shoot. I can see all of her videos on demand. Like I had none of that growing up. Mm-hmm. So I think that is something that's just changed so dramatically in the past 10 years or 20 years, having access to these artists at our fingertips. And I've always loved pop culture. I had always, for a long time, when I was working in the professional world, especially being in Boston, I really realized in the past couple of years how important sports were to a workplace. And living in a city like Boston, you have to be a Sox fan or a Pats fan or a Celtics fan. If you want to just like shoot the shit at the office and like make friends with your coworkers, you have to know something about sports. And I've never really been a huge sports fan. I grew up in New Jersey, so I was a Phillies fan and an Eagles fan for a long time. I still am. And I'm not a diehard fan by any means. Like I watch them play games. I know a couple players on the team. That's fine. That's all I need to know. I'm good. Yep. But I was so struck by the fact that in professional circles, in society in general, sports is taken so seriously. And I worked in an office with a lot of guys. Boston is a pretty bro-heavy city. And if you want to, I think, build camaraderie with your coworkers or even friends or people you meet in a bar, talking about sports is a great way to do that. And I've really tried to like learn more about sports and talk about it. And I, every now and then I'd be like, oh, that touchdown, that was so Tom Brady. Amazing, right? I tried to like fake it until I made it. Didn't work out that well. And then it just dawned on me one day. I was like, I don't want to talk about this shit. I want to talk about Harry and Meghan. I want to talk about like Britney Spears and what she's done for like pop music. I want to talk about Lizzo. I want to talk about Dolly Parton. I want to talk about J-Lo performing at the Super Bowl and how incredible that was for the Latino community in this country and around the world. And Shakira too. She was amazing. So those things were always more important to me. Those things were the things that I was interested in. And I always felt kind of ostracized when I brought those things up, either in professional circles or just personally among friends.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always had a lot of friends I've had a lot of girlfriends. I've had a lot of male platonic friends as well. And I always felt like whenever I brought up, you know, something having to do with pop culture, people were kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's stupid. That's dumb. It's frivolous. I always felt like people treated pop culture as something that was like gossipy, frivolous, superfluous, not really substantial. And in my mind, I'm like, you guys talk about Tom Brady's new fucking haircut. Why can't I talk about the red carpet fashion at the Oscars? Come on.
Straight up. Well, and it's funny to me too, because I will say, to your point about just kind of the difference in access, I feel like even just like a couple years ago, like, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, like, or I guess even more so kind of in the pre-internet, but like smartphone, I feel like that like really is what changed things, because now I think it's almost like everyone knows pop culture. Sure, some people will pretend they're not interested, but it's one of those things where now it's just so much more a part of like news, and it's just like more widely known because everyone has that level of access, like you mentioned. And I think before, if you paid attention to it like as much as probably you and I did, because that was just like a general interest of ours, then it was seen as sort of gossipy and surface level and shallow and like, who cares? But then all of a sudden, when it becomes something that maybe doesn't take quite as much work, now it's like, oh, you don't know who the Kardashians are? Like, you live under a fucking rock. Like, and so.
Yeah. And I totally agree. And the other thing is, when I was growing up, late 90s, early 2000s, the way the media wrote about pop culture was very demeaning. It was very degrading.
Oh, yeah.
They were horrible to women in the media in the early, 2000s. I mean, the media honestly created these like woman against woman scenarios.
Oh,
it was
gosh,
like
so many, like the tabloid type of like,
just it was like Britney versus Christina, or Jessica versus Britney, or Lindsay Lohan versus Paris Hilton. It's like they were trying to sell newspapers. I get it. Nowadays, that kind of clickbait, I don't think is as effective. I think people see through the bullshit a lot more. And I mean, that's one part of it. I think another part of it is, with the advent of social media, I think pop culture is more prevalent nowadays because we see so much more content coming from people like the Kardashians, Ariana Grande, any pop music or pop culture influencer or icon. Because we see more of them on our phones, I think they influence more of our lives. So fashion, for example. I mean, take like beauty and wellness and fitness. I mean, I feel like I see so many 20-somethings nowadays, so many Gen Zers who try to dress exactly like the Kardashians.
Oh, totally. It's all, that's like the look, 100%.
Yeah, and the fashion that we see nowadays in our daily lives is directly influenced by what people see on Instagram. So pop culture is so much more prevalent now, more so than it ever has been in the past. And pop culture and influencers especially are literally driving trends in fashion, beauty, health, and wellness. I mean, that's what pro athletes did in the 90s. And nowadays you have Charlie and Dixie D'Amelio, who are like 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds who are creating brand partnerships with Dunkin' Donuts. That is insane.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I know.
So,
and I will say on the social media topic too, I feel like in a way, because we actually get to see things from artists or celebrities that they are posting themselves versus like you know, maybe your more old school tabloids who got to control the story a little bit more. Like now they're in control of their own narrative. So I don't think they can't spin as much bullshit about all of these people because people can just essentially hop on their Instagram stories and be like, no, that's not fucking true.
Exactly. Yeah. And I honestly wonder about like the plight of the paparazzi. You know, like I'm not defending the paparazzi, but I bet a lot of them have lost their jobs and their work is not as valuable as it once was because any person, if you spot a celebrity in Beverly Hills or New York, can take a photo of it and just put it on Instagram right now. I mean, there's no like a random photo of a random celebrity walking out of a Starbucks isn't as valuable anymore as maybe it was 15, 20 years ago. We're all paparazzi nowadays.
Exactly. Straight up. I know.
It's kind of crazy to think that. But, you know, I just watched the Britney Spears documentary, which everyone needs to watch. And it was horrific what these people did to Britney. I remember even watching an episode of The Kardashians a couple years ago where paparazzi were like chasing Kendall as she was driving through Beverly Hills in her car. And there's no laws around paparazzi in the US.
Which makes no fucking sense. Like how aren't there some regulations? Like these are people. At the end of the day, these are still people. I can't imagine being that famous. I mean, maybe someday. No. but like seriously, I think like that would just get so fucking old so fast. I can't even imagine. And it's one of those things where, especially watching the Britney documentary, like, and I feel like maybe paparazzi isn't quite as crazy as it used to be for many reasons. Yes, the smartphones. I think also, I mean, today's paparazzi now are almost more like street style photographers. Like it's not even about maybe getting like so much before was about getting almost nasty shots you could use against these people, like whether they just happened to look bad or you caught them doing something stupid, like, and I mean, people, like it was like they were almost just out to get you. Like that's how it felt on the Britney documentary, and it was heartbreaking, and they just wouldn't even leave her alone.
Absolutely. And back in 2007, when Britney was going through this breakdown and Lindsay Lohan was in and out of rehab and Amanda Bynes was going into rehab, all of these young women who were having really difficult life experiences. And the last thing they needed was, you know, their readmission into rehab being on the front page. But what we didn't have in 2007 that we have now, I think, is a greater understanding of mental health issues and empathy for those people. And I think nowadays when an artist comes out and says, like Chrissy Teigen, for example, she had a miscarriage recently. She posted about that on social media. I think a lot more people nowadays are seeing famous people posting these things on social media. They're being like vulnerable. Humanizing them. Yeah. Humanizing them, exactly. And I think a lot of people, not everybody, there will be trolls, but a lot of people have more sympathy and empathy for these people. And they're less willing to, you know, maybe chase down a paparazzi photo of this person sobbing, going into a rehab center. Now, I think back in 2007, it was more about pinning this narrative on somebody that they were like a screw up. It was a breakdown. It was like chaos. It was like a messy divorce, whatever.
Whatever drama nowadays, they can dig up. Yeah.
Yeah. And nowadays it's like, oh, like this person's like going through some shit. I love this person. I'm a big fan of this person. I'm going to like this photo and send some heart or comment some hearts on this photo. Yeah. And like, that's it. Now I feel sad for this person. I think social media has done a much better job, I think, of humanizing people, especially celebrities that share that information. And I think generally we're more aware of mental health issues as well. So I'm hoping that the paparazzi aren't as persistent and as nasty as they have been in the past nowadays.
I know. Well, and that's funny because it comes full circle. I mean, again, the pluses and minuses of the internet. Like, it gives you so much more access to these people in such a good and bad way. Like, you can essentially go and harass them online if you want to, but at the same time, you get to see them in their natural habitat. You see that they're just people just like us, me and you. They're real. They have their own struggles and issues behind the scenes.
But their issues are in, like, luxury mansions in Beverly Hills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe still a little bit out of touch, but
yeah. But they're just like us.
Me and my, like, you know, 600 square foot apartment that I haven't left in days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and so let's take it back to your podcast because I think, you know,
we
it's
got
just,
distracted there.
We're passionate about these things. But yeah, I mean, I just think it's awesome. You get to connect with all these cool people and really just like, you know, bond over these amazing female musicians. And that's so awesome. Like, I mean, I think music is just one of those things. It sounds sappy, but I know you all listen to music. Like, it just brings it brings people together. It makes you feel happy when you want to feel happy. And if you want to, like, you know, get in a little sad, sorrowful mood, there's tons of good music for that. Like, it can essentially cater to whatever you're looking for. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I got so distracted talking about pop culture. This is why I started a podcast. So I had like a place to like express my feelings about pop culture and music in society. And and I, you know, kind of decided that I wanted to do a podcast about music because in addition to podcasts, music was really getting me through the pandemic. And I've always been a fan of pop music, pop culture, female singer-songwriters. And I feel like throughout my life, I've had, you know, friends that were interested in music, but a lot of my friends, you know, don't want to talk to me for 2.5 hours at length about a Taylor Swift album. I mean, I've thought about dropping them as friends on multiple occasions, but I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just talk about this with them for 20 minutes and then go on my podcast and talk about it even more there. So I needed, I think,
100%.
I needed an outlet for my interest in music. I needed a place to like just deep dive it and talk about it ad nauseum. And I needed a creative outlet too. I've realized during the pandemic that, you know, I had a lot more free time and I started kind of watching movies and reading books and feeling more inspired, feeling like I needed to do something a little more crafty or a little more creative. And I started this podcast and I was like, holy shit, this is what's been missing from my life for the past 3 years. I was, you know, 3 years prior or to the pandemic, I was living in Boston. I was working a lot. I was traveling. I was seeing friends. You know, I had a pretty awesome life, but I wasn't doing anything creative. Mm-hmm. And that was really, I think, the missing piece for me. So I started doing the podcast. I'm really creative with, I think, the social media, with the people that I have on the show. I do a lot of research about these artists, and it's really been a really fun outlet for me to express my love for people like Taylor Swift and Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus. And I have big plans to do an episode about Beyonce and express my undying love for Queen Bee.
The Queen.
So it's been really fun. I love talking about music. I love talking about female artists and how they inspire me. I love talking about how their music has impacted pop culture and society at large. I have a lot of opinions on their music, so it's nice to have a place to finally express those opinions.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, it's so funny because in a very similar vein, I think that podcasting turned into an outlet for me too. And some might say a bad one, but for me, I think it's been very healthy because instead of complaining to all of my loved ones, I get to do it on here.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where, I mean, very similar situation, like essentially, I mean, I've heard for years and years, like I'm a complainer and some people love that about me. Some people maybe don't. And that's okay. Like, I totally understand that. For me, it's just like a natural way to deal with things. I also think it's funny. So like, I mean, and I
love talking shit and complaining. It's the best thing ever. It's great.
The best. It's so therapeutic, you know, it's cathartic. You just kind of get to get some bullshit off of your chest, and that's what it's all about. But, and my style of complaining, at least if you ask me, is, you know, it's never, I mean, maybe sometimes it gets a little woe is me, but like for the most part, I'm just bitching to bitch because I think it's funny. And like, that's how I, you know, get through a tough situation, whether it's, you know, like acne or something, you know, sort of trivial or being furloughed. Like that's what I do. And so, I mean, and like I keep people in my life who are mostly cool with my complaining, but even then, like I know, for example, James has said like, you know, you could maybe try to be like a little less negative and like, okay, you're probably right. And so now I just channel it into this. But I mean, that really is kind of like my podcasting origin story. And it's just so funny because, and aside from complaining, I just love talking. Like I could talk all day. It doesn't matter if anyone's listening. It truly doesn't. And
Same. Yep.
And so this was, kind of like the missing link for me. And I think in a very similar fashion, quarantine inspired like a lot of creativity. I was writing more than I ever had been. And in a similar way, I think I had just gotten into such a rhythm with work and a busy social life and just kind of trying to juggle all of the things that I had going on pre-pandemic. And then, you know, it kind of rocked my world, but I had free time, and that's what I gravitated toward, was a creative project. And so like, it's just been really awesome. And it's very funny too. I mean, you and I have such a similar timeline because I think I also started my podcast in November. Like,
yeah. And when were you furloughed?
And I would have been furloughed, I think April or maybe May.
Yeah. Same here. I was furloughed in April. I was officially laid off in August. And I was like, shit, I got to do something now. So.
Yeah, right. But I mean, it's very funny too, because I mean, I worked my hours back up, but there was just some, like, speaking of inspiring creativity and just kind of getting you, I think, I'm not going to sit there and say I'm grateful for the pandemic because it fucking sucks, but
there were some interesting outcomes from the pandemic.
There were. And like, I think even like in a similar way, both you and I mean, literally it's so funny because the last time we spoke was 3 weeks ago and we both are now in new jobs. And I think it's just, I might not have even made the switch to this new career if I hadn't had kind of some time off to just really think about what I wanted. And, you know, so
Definitely.
It's just, I mean, it sucks, but there are a couple bright sides.
Yeah. And thank God that we have this outlet. Like a couple years ago, podcasting did not exist.
Right. Totally.
And the internet was not the place 5 years ago that it is today. Like, anybody can make a project or a podcast or an audio file and put on the internet. And so many people have become YouTube influencers and Instagram influencers and bloggers. And I mean, I think that's a pretty amazing thing that's come out of the internet, but also the pandemic. Yeah. Like, we've democratized access to these platforms. I mean, assuming that you have a stable internet, you can become an influencer. You know, I think, even though the pandemic did suck a lot, we're still in it and it's terrible. It really made us get back to basics. And I think it made a lot of people look in the mirror and say, what do I need? What's working? What's not working? Yeah. We also went through this massive upheaval over the summer with, you know, racial justice movements. We went through a presidential election that was fucking brutal. Yep. I mean, 2020 was like the worst year we've ever experienced. It was so chaotic. It was full of turmoil. I really feel like I'm on the come down right now from 2020. I feel like I did like a ton of drugs and now I'm like coming down off that high. Not even a high. I just feel terrible the next day. I'm like recovering still mentally, emotionally, and physically from 2020 because it was brutal for so many people. And, you know, I'm not grateful for the pandemic, but I'm in some ways grateful for what I learned from it and what it gave us. I think a lot of people got back to basics and realized what they wanted in their lives and what they didn't need in their lives. And I don't want to go through it again, but I'm, you know, glad we went through it.
Good, yeah. Oh, totally. Well, and so what are you doing now? Like, what's your new gig?
So I started at a company called HubSpot, which is based in Boston. But
yes.
Yeah.
I know HubSpot. I work with HubSpot all day long.
Nice. Okay. We probably know more than I do at this point about HubSpot. But I'm going to be doing contract management for them. So I'll be kind of working with customers on renewing contracts.
Sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, they're huge. I will say you probably, I won't say I know more than you because HubSpot is a beast. There are so many things that you can do with it. Like, I can't even begin to wrap my head around it. But I mean, it's awesome. It integrates with like every fucking software that has ever existed. So
Yeah, it's an incredible piece of software, and I've never been like a tech person, but I'm really excited to like learn more about the software and what it can do. And I'm just going to learn so many new like tech phrases like API and I don't know, integrations and interface, and I don't even know, but
I know, isn't it funny? Like those words, it just makes you feel smart, you know? It just
Yeah.
does. Well, that's awesome. That's so exciting. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
they're a huge company, so that they have a lot of cool shit going on, and they're literally always changing and adapting. Like the amount of times I've been on calls with HubSpot just to try to learn like one new feature they've released is crazy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's like the ethos of the company. They're really progressive, really focused on like forward momentum and very much a growth mindset, which I did not have at my last job. So I'm very excited to be in this progressive, always changing company.
yeah, it's a good change of pace for sure. Well, that's
Yeah.
exciting. I'm so happy for you. And I know it's just like one of those things where it just feels like finally we can take a deep breath, you know, like it's like,
Yeah. I'm like,
shit,
oh, I have a
it's-
job now.
yeah,
Thank God.
right. I mean, it's one of the, like, it's just such a stability thing, you know, like,
Yeah. And like job searching in a pandemic, I mean, job searching anytime is awful.
brutal. Yeah.
But in a pandemic, especially, it's especially stressful because I felt like there was so much more competition for jobs
I
nowadays.
mean, yeah, like half of the world's been unemployed. Like,
Yeah. It's like most of my friends are out of work and they're probably applying for similar jobs that I am. So it's
Totally.
like the Hunger Games out there.
Yeah. Every man for himself. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Well, and so I guess like I want to, because, okay, when I first broached my podcast idea to you, I was like, because obviously if I'm coming on yours, I want you to come on mine. And
Yeah.
we were just
Podcast
talking. Hell yeah. Then it's my first one. And I have to say, podcasting, like recording with another podcaster is really nice. We both have microphones. We are so profesh.
We have so many beverages in front of us.
Yes,
We're just so profesh.
we know the drill. So, but it's been fun. And like, it's so funny because you know, they have a different theme, but you were immediately like, I love to complain, like, let's do this. And I kind of just talked to you about a couple of the other things that I've discussed. I mean, it's an open-ended podcast, like whatever you want to complain about, I'm here for. But I guess I want to know what else has been keeping you busy. You know, we talked about bad dates. I'd love to hear some stories.
Yeah. Dating. Well, dating during a pandemic is interesting. So I just moved from Boston back to Burlington, Vermont, and moved here in August. And during the summer, Vermont had very low COVID rates. There were a lot of outdoor dining options. You know, I felt pretty comfortable like meeting up with somebody and sitting outside and having a beer.
Totally.
So all COVID safe dates, thankfully.
Yeah.
Didn't do a whole lot of COVID dating, but I went on, it's going to get me in trouble. I went on a few dates with this one guy who, really cool guy. We bonded over I think I messaged him first on Hinge because he had really cool tattoos. And I just got a tattoo last year. I'm really into tattoos. So we started chatting over tattoos. And we were like texting, like we met up once or twice and we started following each other on Instagram. And I scrolled down to one of his pictures and realized he has a lot of tattoos. He's got like 25 tattoos.
Okay.
And saw a pic on Instagram, which I think I was drinking wine. I just like, it fell out of my mouth. I was like wine everywhere. I was like, holy shit, what's going on? I saw this image that brought me to a standstill. It was a picture of this tattoo, and it's going to get a little graphic here. So just so your listeners are aware, he has a picture of a tattoo, or he has a tattoo, it's a really beautiful tattoo when you look at it at first. It's a strawberry, and the colors look great. It's got this like vintage kind of, you know, pinup girl-esque design quality to it. It's a really cool tattoo of a strawberry, but one side is a very detailed vagina.
Oh my God. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And the vagina is like like you can't miss it. It's straight up textbook level quality, like graphic. It is
okay, details. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fucking hilarious. Wait, okay, where on his body was this?
Well, that was, I mean, after I got over the initial shock of seeing that tattoo, I was like, where is this? I really hope it's not like on his like neck or something.
His forehead. Yeah. Like literally.
So it was on like the back of his arm, and you can't really see it if he's wearing a t-shirt, but I was like, what if you like go swimming somewhere? Like, what if you're like a family birthday party and there's kids there? You're like, that's like right out there in front. Kids are gonna be like, why do you only have half of a strawberry on your arm?
Hilarious.
So
gonna have to come up with a good story for that one when the kids come asking. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this was really bad timing because I had been stalking him on Insta, and then we were like about to go have a date like the next day. And I was like, oh my God, please don't say anything about this. Like, don't let it drop on the date that I've like already stalked his Instagram and I know about this tattoo.
Well, okay, because at that point, like to your friends, he's just like vagina tattoo guy. Like that's who he is.
That's what we call him.
Yeah.
We call him Strawberry Tattoo Guy.
Hilarious.
Yeah. So of course, I immediately take a screenshot of this, send it to all my friends. We call him Strawberry Tattoo Guy. And so like we're on this date, and I was like, don't say it, don't let it slip. So at one point I was like, so how many tattoos do you have? Just like casually mentioning tattoos. He's like, yeah, I've got one here. I've got one here. I've got an offensive tattoo as well. I was like, oh, really? I had no idea. You have an offensive tattoo? I had no idea. So I got the story from him about the origin of the tattoo, and thankfully I didn't let it slip that I already knew about this tattoo.
Poker face, yeah.
But oh my God, I was like sweating bullets at this outdoor brewery, and I was like, oh my God, don't say anything.
Don't give it away. That's so funny. Well, okay, did you see him again after that? Or how do we feel about Vagina Tattoo Guy?
We hung out a couple times after that.
So it wasn't like a determining factor.
It wasn't a deal breaker. It was a red flag, not a deal breaker.
Yes.
But it was a big red flag. I was like, holy shit. This is on his body. Holy shit.
Well, and if you just think of the reverse, like, I don't know, imagine if you just saw some random girl with some like eggplant dick tattoo. Like, what on earth?
I know, right? It's like, I'm not going to get like a penis tattoo on me.
Yeah, no.
So we talked about it because he told me, like, he volunteered this information. I was like, oh, tell me about your tattoos. He's like, yeah, I've got this one strawberry one here. He pulled up his t-shirt. I saw it in the flesh. I can verify it's real.
He was ready to talk about it.
I was like, wow, why did you tell me more about this interesting tattoo? I was like, why did you get this? He's like, well, I'm friends with this artist. She wanted to do this tattoo, and I already have like 25 tattoos. So I was like, yeah, like what the hell? Why not? And I really believe that vaginas are like beautiful and spiritual, and I really worship them.
Oh my God, yes.
So I was like, yeah, I'll get this tattoo. I was like, oh okay.
Well, in some ways, I'm comforted that it was not his design.
I think it was his friend who's the artist who wanted to express herself in a creative way. So I'm all about it.
I can respect that.
Creative expression, all about it.
Yes.
But that honestly, I kept it together on that date, but I left that date. I was like texting all my friends, like, what does this mean?
Yeah, what is the...
You're going to murder me? What's going on?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. What's the symbolism behind this? Yeah.
So that was, I think, my most craziest recent dating experience for you.
I mean, that's top of the charts kind of stuff right there. Well, it's funny. I guess I have this question for you because we're talking about red flags. Mm-hmm. What are some of your like red flags when you're going on a date, or just like even... Because, you met this guy on Hinge, so, like, red flags even from, like, a Hinge profile. You know, like, what is something that's, like, a turn-off immediately? Or not even a turn-off.
How much time you got?
Yeah. We can talk all day.
Oh, my God. Well, in terms of online dating, I've kind of been on and off the apps for the past few years. I was doing them in Boston and, a little bit up here in Vermont, but not a ton, to be honest.
Probably a different crowd on the apps. Yeah.
Very different crowd on the apps. You can really, from like a sociological point of view, if you want to get a good read on a city, go on a dating app in any city for like 20 minutes and you can get a good vibe of that city.
Totally.
So in Boston, it's all tech bros, finance guys,
Yep.
old money guys like Chad or Tucker or Brett. A lot of like Patagonia vests. Like, I mean, I'm wearing one right now. I probably shouldn't talk, but like,
but it's
like
different.
So many,
it is. Yeah.
The Patagonia vest in Boston, it's more of a symbol of like which tech firm you work at, because every tech company has like the embroidered Patagonia swag.
Oh yes,
it's a thing in
it's like
startup
their version
central
of
Boston.
monogram. Yeah,
it's monogrammed with their logo on it. It's insane. So that's the dating online app dating scene in Boston. You get a lot of like very nerdy, very smart, engineers, product managers, developers. You get the startup guys who are raising money for their dumbass startup idea, like lots of different things. It's pretty interesting. You get a lot of really interesting like PhD researchers. I went on a date a couple years ago with this guy who was like researching, he was a cardiologist who was researching different methods to prevent heart attacks, like some really interesting people. But you get a lot of like obnoxious Tom Brady fans in Boston too. So that wasn't really my scene. But in general, I think red flags for dating profiles would be when people don't fill out the prompts very well. Like there's a prompt on Hinge that says, I'm overly competitive about, and you're supposed to write something in there. And every dude just goes, their response, I've seen this hundreds of times, is everything, LOL. It's like, really, Brad? You're competitive about everything? Really?
Yes, straight up.
Oh my God. It's like you couldn't like think of like
with it. Yeah.
You couldn't think of one thing. Like, I'm competitive at foosball. I'm competitive at, I don't know, eating lobster rolls. I don't know, something unique.
Well, and first of all, if you're not going to take this opportunity to be funny, you lose points. But second of all, if you're going to come off and seem like you're going to literally fight me on everything, like, no, I don't think that's going to work.
It's like, I'm not going to compete with you about like who can load the dishwasher faster. Like, I don't give a shit. So that's really annoying. Another a thing that bothers me is when people just take selfies, like car selfies, and it's like a profile of like 4 car selfies. I'm like, get out of your car. Like, have someone take your picture.
Yeah,
you don't have any friends that can take your picture,
right? Yeah. Where are the candidates? Yeah.
Yeah. So the only selfies drives me nuts. Only selfies in a car with your hat on, your hat on backwards drives me nuts. The bathroom mirror selfie.
Oh, even worse,
awful.
Maybe. Yeah.
You know what's so bad about that? Guys, men, just people in general, clear off your bathroom counter before you take a selfie. Wipe down the mirror. I can see like little like spit marks on your mirror. It's disgusting.
Your beard clippings, like we don't want that. Yeah, we're good actually.
No, that's not what a mirror in a bathroom is for. It's not it. You're missing the point here. I just hate selfies in general. So those really drive me nuts. Any photos of like any dudes in like, a wife beater, tank top holding a fish, really just don't do anything for me. Oh my God.
I feel like the fish photos, like, there's a reason that those are so popular amongst men, but that is, again, to impress other men. Like, we don't give a fuck about the size of the fish that you caught at the lake 3 summers ago. Like, we're good. Yeah.
I agree. That's a photo to impress another dude.
Yeah.
Not a photo to impress any women.
So either you're on the wrong apps or something, your motives are, I don't know, something's off.
It's like, I don't like seafood. I don't like going on boats. I get very seasick. I'm not interested in fishing with you and your bros for half a day. I don't want to do that. I don't want to crush Bud Light in the middle of the Atlantic. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, no thank you. It's not our scene.
There are sharks in those waters now. Because of climate change, there are sharks. I'm not going anywhere that ocean.
Yeah, very scary. Good point.
Rant over.
Well, and it's funny, like I'm trying to think. I literally have never been on an app. Like
Wow, good for you.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I've always been curious, but I have essentially been in a long-term relationship. So the apps, I never made it over to the apps. And like, there's a part of me that I just want to scroll on them for almost like research. Like, I just want to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to see how you're constructing your profile. I love what you said about just like, that's how you can catch a vibe for a new city. That's so true. Like, that's so funny.
So I think the apps are, like, from like an academic point of view, fascinating.
Yes.
Like, I really hope there are like sociologists and anthropologists collecting all of this data, because I want to know what comes of this in the next 20 years. Like,
I mean, this is like our new mating ritual, like, literally.
It really is. Yeah. Like, I think like the data behind it is so interesting. I read a book a few years ago. It was by Aziz Ansari. It's called Modern Love. Really interesting book. It's all about like dating apps in different countries and different cultural norms as it relates to dating. So interesting.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Yeah, so I honestly, we're still at the very beginning of the world with dating apps. I wonder what it's going to be like 20, 30 years from now. If the apps still exist, if there's a new way to meet people online. I just think it's like a very interesting sociological thing to study as well.
Oh, same. It's fascinating to me. And I mean, it's so funny now because, I mean, okay, so Facebook has like a dating platform now, which, you know, people mock, but at the same time, Facebook already knows so much about you. Like, to me, that makes sense. But it's funny because I get ads for it because I don't think James and I, like, we just never said we were dating on Facebook. So Facebook's trying to be like, hey, do you want to come join our like little dating app? And now I'm seeing, okay, and I have not done my research on this, so I'm kind of talking out of my ass. It could be fake, but I have been seeing that there's like Amazon dating. Like, what? But of course,
oh my God,
if that's true, of course, Amazon was like, next, like, you know, like, of course.
Wait, Amazon dating, does that mean you can like have somebody here within 2 hours?
Yep. Yeah. They're just going to be drone shipped and plopped at your front door.
Wait, can you like leave reviews for people on Amazon that you've dated?
That would actually be fucking amazing. You know, how come that's not on the app?
Really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we leave a review?
Oh my God, there have been so many times when I've gone out with somebody and I'm like, that guy's an asshole. I wish I could give him a 1-star review.
Yeah, like a thumbs down, something.
Yeah.
Let the ladies know.
Yeah, like a Glassdoor or something, or an Amazon review system for shitty guys that you've been on first dates with.
Yeah, there should just be like maybe like room for constructive criticism afterwards. Like, there's
This guy texted me and showed up late. He was wearing cargo shorts.
We do hate the cargo shorts. Yeah.
The worst.
Another red flag.
I went on a date with a guy who literally showed up in like cargo shorts and like a white tank top.
No.
It was really bad. It was so bad.
The thing is, it's one thing, okay, if we start dating and I find out you wear those kinds of things in your free time, not pleased, but whatever. But if you if that's you sitting there being like, here I am going on my first date with somebody and I'm going to put on my best dressed clothes, and that leads you to put on cargo shorts? Like, I don't know.
No. Cargo shorts are only good if you're like hiking in the backcountry, maybe fishing. And you need lots of pockets.
Yes.
Like, that's it.
That's what I'm saying. If you're not making use of every single pocket on those fucking pants, don't put them on.
Yeah.
Don't put them on.
If you're on safari, sure, wear a cargo short. I don't care. But not...
Practicality, yeah.
Yeah,
otherwise,
not for happy hour. No, come on.
That's right.
What
Put
are in your
slacks
pockets?
on, yeah. What could you possibly be needing right now? Just in case, yeah.
Yeah, that's a huge, drives me nuts. Some people that just like don't even like put any effort into the date.
Oh.
That's also pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
Like, I've heard of some people who just like go to the same bar, same time, wear the same exact thing, and just swap out the person.
Yeah.
And it's like, do something a little more interesting, because at that point, if you're dating, it becomes a chore. It becomes something that you have to do.
That's true.
I don't ever want it to get to that point. I want it to be fun.
Yeah, that's kind of the opposite of the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of supposed to be a good time. Not something you feel
Some people, I think,
obligated.
just treat it like what's the word? A factory, like a...
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, it's
supply.
just a run-of-the-mill. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
an automated process. You just get in, get out, go on the date. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's another, I think, bad thing about the apps is in a city like Boston or New York or anywhere really, you don't run out of people.
Yep.
So if you go on one date and it's not that exciting, you can literally go to the bathroom and go back on your apps and swipe while you're on a date.
Yeah.
Like that is, that happened to me a couple years ago. I was in the Uber on the way home from this crappy date and I was swiping people. And I was like, this sucks.
Yeah.
Like I was on this date with this person. He was like a nice guy, but nothing super exciting. And I get in the Uber on the way home, like I'm on the apps already. Like I feel like the apps have made humans disposable.
Yeah.
Because, if you're not happy with this one person, there's plenty of other fish literally in your phone for you to go out and meet.
Right.
And,
like it's almost not worth it to try to give them a second chance because.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because there's other people that you could be spending your time with. And I think, people just, I'm guilty of it too, but I think we don't really give people enough of a chance to meet them and really get to know them because we're always thinking about like what else is out there.
Yeah.
Dating apps were designed, with the same mentality and the same design structure as slot machines. Mm-hmm. You always want to keep pulling because you never know what else is next.
That's so true.
Yeah. So the swipe feature is actually a very brilliantly designed psychological feature because it keeps you on the apps for a longer period of time. Similar to a news feed, it keeps you on the apps for a longer period of time because there's always more to consume and discover.
Oh, that's actually fascinating. And that makes so much sense, but it's one of those things that it's almost so obvious that then when you're using it, you don't even think about it because it's so seamlessly designed in that way. You're just like, yeah, let's keep fucking going. I could do this all day.
Yeah. And the psychology of the apps is, not just dating apps, but Instagram as well it's incredible. Like think about the hit of dopamine that you get when you get a like on a photo.
Totally.
Or you get a lot of likes on a photo, or you get a DM from somebody, or you get a friend request. It's the same with the apps. Depending on the app you use, they can preload likes for you. Mm-hmm. They can queue up 3 or 4 people to send to you and say, these people liked you. What do you think about them? They can notify you of when you've been liked or hearted or starred or whatever. They're designed to get you to stay on those apps. They're designed to give you that short-term satisfaction, and they're designed to keep you there. So you keep using the app for a lot longer. It's crazy how it's all
crazy. It's just so fascinating. It's really interesting. And it's kind of just interesting to think about the weird vested interest that then the people who design that have, because yes, this probably started from this idea of playing matchmaker, but then it turns into, I don't actually want to make a successful match because I want all these people to come back on and stay on here.
And the monetization of apps now that's a whole nother story. On Hinge, for example, you can buy, they have this new thing now, you can buy roses to give to people, which means you really like someone. Very bachelor, yeah. So if you really like somebody, you can send them a rose, and each rose is like $2 or something.
Oh, it actually costs money. Oh.
Yeah. And you can pay for different membership levels to go back. If you swipe on somebody and you didn't mean to, you can go back and reverse that. You can match with people. You can see who's liked you and see if you want to match with them. There's lots of different ways you can see more matches or get paired with more matches that are more similar to your profile if you choose to pay X amount to an app.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's sort of funny too, because would you want to tell people like, yes, I'm VIP on this dating app, or like whatever level, yeah, I do pay, or like, it's almost sort of like.
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And like on Bumble, for example, that's one of the most successful apps out there.
Okay.
So Bumble is an app where women make the first move. The female, message men first. And they've monetized that app. There's actually 3 different ways you can use Bumble. You can use Bumble for dating. You can use it for Bumble BFF, where you can find other friends through Bumble, and Bumble Biz, where you can do business networking on Bumble.
Oh, I did not know I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's a really interesting model. And you can pay for different memberships to, have unlimited messaging or have video calling or to see who has messaged you or who has liked you and you can respond to them. There's lots of different features to the app. And the app has been so successful in the past couple of years that I think it was last month, actually, the founder took the company public. And it was one of the first dating apps to go public. And it was pretty remarkable because this app is led by Whitney Wolfe Herd, who is a 32-year-old woman. And I think it just goes to show how profitable online dating can be, as well as how influential and ubiquitous online dating is nowadays.
Well, I know, and it's so funny because even I feel like, sure, there were things like eHarmony, Match.com, but I feel like for sort of like our generation, like the millennial online dating scene, like it was kind of like started with Tinder, or at least that's when it really became popular. But even at the beginning of Tinder, like you almost didn't want to tell people that that's how you met the person you were going out with. Like it was kind of hush hush that we met online. And now I feel like it's just totally the norm. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember like when I was in high school, my aunt had I think it was a Match.com account. And at that point in time, it was like, oh my God, only like weird old people go online to go dating. No offense to her. But that was the era of like AOL chat rooms and dial up. And like,
it was almost so like much. For divorcees, people who were like it kind of had like a weird stigma to it. And now, which I think just comes with everyone's online all the time anyways, like it's a natural way to meet people, whether that is networking or something a little bit more intimate like dating. I mean, even in the time of COVID, it's so funny because you're not even meeting up sometimes, like you're actually having a legitimate online first date. I can't even imagine, but but that's becoming the norm.
Yeah, I think online dating has become so common nowadays that most people, I think under 40 in the US, have some familiarity with it. So it's become a lot more common. There's so many apps out there now that, if you're interested in a hookup, you go to Tinder. If you're interested in a relationship, you go to Hinge. Like if you're Jewish and you want to be on the dating apps and find another Jewish partner, you go to Plenty of Fish. Like there's so many apps out there that cater to so many different interests and so many different people that it's become just so common. And I think in a way that's a good thing because for a long time, it was like, oh, I'm on the apps. Don't tell anybody. I don't want it to be known. But nowadays, it's just everybody does it.
Yeah.
And it's how you meet partners, meet friends. You do networking online. Like, that's just how we do everything.
Yeah. See, full circle again, because here we are. Like, here's another positive thing the internet has brought us. We love the internet. We live on it.
We do.
And we love it. And sometimes
I'm addicted to it. Sometimes I hate it, but most of the time I love the internet. It's been my longest term relationship ever, really.
Straight up. Like, and will I ever get off it? No, it's just not. It's just not going to happen like that.
Yeah. Same here. I love it.
It definitely comes with like learning how to have a healthy balance with it. But I mean, I guess that comes with all good things. You have to keep a kind of balance there. But
yeah, I think we should make merch that with like t-shirts that just say like, I love the internet.
Yeah, straight up. We are internet fangirls. That is who we are.
Yes. That's my next podcast. A fangirl podcast about the internet.
Hell yes. Well, I'm excited. I'm really glad that we got to do this. I'm glad that the internet led me to you and we have a new internet friendship, and who knows, maybe someday when the world is not such a big fat mess, I'll meet you in person.
That would be great. Come on out to the East Coast. We're really, I know I didn't tell the story that we were friendly people, but we're actually really friendly people on the East Coast.
I can vouch for you, Liz. I think you're very friendly. So,
thanks.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I mean, we're going to have to do this again. I'm very excited for a Beyonce episode. I can't wait. I'm going to be listening to your podcast for the rest of time. So
yes. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So we have a podcast coming out. I need to edit it, but it's going to be about Miley Cyrus. So listeners of Pessimistic at Best, keep your eyes and ears peeled for an episode of the Fangirl podcast featuring the one and only host, Samantha and Liz.
Woo-woo.
on the show talking about Miley.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that one. So, I mean, most of my friends know that I'm a big Miley fan, but I think we do a big time deep dive into just like her history and everything that makes her so fucking cool. So,
yeah.
I'm excited.
Oh, it's going to be a good one. But thank you for having me. This was my first podcast swap. It was so much fun. I love talking shit on podcasts. So whenever you need me, I'm here.
Heck yes, we will definitely do it again. Well, thank you. And thank you guys for listening. And I will talk with you guys again next week.
Thanks. Bye.